So this is my first meeting analysis, and I chose to do a vlog for it because I'm still in New York, so why not? So this meeting was with Danny LaFuente. He works at the W.R. Berkeley Innovation Labs at NYU, and he's one of the social entrepreneurship kind of mentors in this space. And he himself has started up a few different businesses. He's originally from Miami, and he started a thing called Miami Lab, which is like a collaborative workspace specifically for entrepreneurs who are up and coming. And that has an educational aspect to it, which connects it with social entrepreneurship. And his newest venture is a thing called Simple Vodka. I'm holding his card right here, Danny LaFuente, but I didn't meet him obviously for vodka. But he actually said their brand labelist for Simple Vodka is in Portland, which is pretty cool. But that's just the newest venture he's working on, and every whatever amount of the vodka, I guess, that's purchased, they donate like 30 homes to people who need 30 homes. What am I saying? 30 meals for people who need to be fed that day or that night, like working with Feed America and things like that. So that's pretty cool. So it's kind of a venture that somewhat is related to houseless individuals, which is pretty interesting. But the reason I got connected with him was through Cynthia Franklin. I think that was one of your connections, Peter, at NYU. But this guy is one who really runs the innovation space in general. And so when I got there, I waited, and he was a couple minutes late, but that was fine. We let our meeting spot go a few minutes over 2. And so we just discussed, like, I gave him context of why I was there. We kind of already, he had an idea of I'm a student and I'm working on this kind of venture, but I just gave him more context about it. And the first thing he mentioned was something that I've heard of from another person who I've been meeting with but haven't met with yet, is these stands called Link NYC, which already exist here in New York. They're big, kind of lit up stands all around the city. Initially, their purpose is to have just Wi-Fi at the box and like a charging port, mostly like for tourists and people who are just out and moving fast in New York. But they also have like a screen with kind of internet capabilities. I've only seen one so far, and I took a photo of it, but I didn't actually get to use it because we were just walking fast on the street. But this guy, Danny, was saying he has a good friend who works in finance at Link NYC. And I actually emailed them and their team and tried to set up a meeting, but no one got back to me. But Danny's friend works in finance, and he said he would reach out to her and see if she could meet me before Thursday, which would be awesome, obviously. But he said one of the biggest things she shared with him was them looking at their data analytics of when people are using these Link NYC machines and how often, what types of things are they searching. They actually found that a big percentage of people using these are at nighttime, and they're searching things like food banks or shelters. So that's actually really showing that their product is serving this market that they weren't thinking that they would serve, and those are people who are living outside. So that kind of just reiterated that like my project has a good idea behind it and that it kind of can be done, which was really nice to see. And he said actually Link NYC is owned by Intersection Sidewalk Labs, which is a subsidiary of Sidewalk Labs, which is run by Eric Schmidt, who's the Google CEO. So it has a lot of big money and big people behind it, which is pretty cool. And 2 of their biggest features are that they're lit up, so they have a good kind of lighting security aspect, and the charging ports for sure. And then something else he was telling me, yeah, I already said with Danny at NYU, our meeting topic was just for me to kind of give him context of why I was there, but to hear what they do at the Innovation Lab and just about social enterprises he started up himself. And it started, today's Monday, it started at 2:35 because we were 5 minutes late, and we went to about 3:10. And I don't have his LinkedIn, but I do have his business card, and I do have his email because we've been emailing back and forth. Um, yeah, so other things that he mentioned um, was that Link NYC, they went through the city to get availability to use the spots already in the ground. And they found places with fiber cables already running through, and then that's where they plotted their like station on top of those. So they're paying for the hardware themselves, and then figuring out like the fiber and stuff like that, and using other um, carriers or service providers. And an idea that Danny had about my project is if we ever get to the prototyping or piloting phase, is to seek out old payphone spots because those are already like blocks chunked up in the sidewalk that nothing's being used on them. So that's kind of prime real estate, that we're not taking anything away from the city street or whatever. Um, and one of the biggest pieces of advice he gave just about being a social entrepreneur is that you really have to put on both hats, the nonprofit hat and the for profit hat, because if your business goes out of business, you can't serve the people you're trying to serve if you have no money. So he said that's obviously really hard because we're trying to think about like houseless individuals, and obviously they're not going to pay for this. So he gave some advice, kind of like what Link NYC is doing, is to find the commercial viability. That's where the money's going to be. Whether it's like you're providing this Wi Fi and then people have to sign in through their email, and then now you have an email list, or you get sponsors to pay for ads when people are using this web service or whatever they're advertising on the station. So those are two possible ideas for sponsor revenue. And another thing, obviously, is to collect the data of like who's using the machine for how long, at what time of day, what types of things are they searching. And then another thing he was saying is scaling up can really help or really allow you to help people more, even though scaling up might mean more money involved and like more of a for profit thing, which kind of feels counterintuitive, like you're going against this whole idea of helping people for free. But obviously, the bigger you are, the more powerful, and the more money, then the more you can help people. So you just kind of have to balance those two hats, which is definitely hard for me to imagine. Um, and another thing that he's kind of just mentioning, which we kind of already know from our business model canvas, is to think about the actual cost of the maintenance of the physical structure, and of the application, and then how would we get the internet or the service provider? Would they just provide it because they're contributing to a good cause? And then you'd get their advertising out there. Like, what would that kind of system look like to make it work? And then he was saying, because it is kind of difficult, just as a young student with this new idea in Portland, to see how many, like if I put forth a petition type thing and then see how many signatures you need in Portland, um, that you're required for like the city council to give you a spot at their meeting or whatever to present something to them. So that could be a way to actually go to the city and propose something like this. That's obviously kind of past the prototyping phase and whatnot. But we could go to them and just say like, hey, can we pilot this for a certain amount of time and see what kind of data we collect and see if it's worth pursuing. And another thing he was saying about money that I was kind of hoping to bank on was like fundraising and donors and grants and stuff like that. But he kind of said the harsh reality about things like that is just that you use up that money really quickly in the beginning and then it's all gone. And then if you don't have a sustainable business model, then you can't stay open. If you can't keep my own house lights on or whatever, how can I continue on the project to help other people? So that's kind of just a harsh reality behind the social enterprise. And then he was saying about specifically like design thinking elements of designing the product. is to design it for the extreme. So he like drew a bell curve. Obviously, we all know what a bell curve is. He drew it on one of their whiteboards and was just saying like one end could be like crazy tech savvy, use technology everyday person, and then the other end would be like your grandma who doesn't know how to use a touchscreen or whatever, and then create it for the power user, like our ideal target market, the houseless individual, and then the opposite end, the person who is using it to like web search the closest mall. I don't know, something like that. Um, and then if you cover not just, he said, like the top 33%, which is the middle of the curve, but from end to end, you'll cover roughly about 80%, which is almost everyone. So that's a good way to look at it. And then the very last thing he was saying, because I mentioned the phone call thing that we have in Portland, 211, I think it is. And when my team was working on Street Cloud, we actually called 211. They have a phone number and an application. But when we called, they were closed, and they don't even have like a voicemail or a call or a chat box or something like that. They're just closed. So if someone is 9 p.m. and needs a shelter and they call this number, no one's going to answer. And obviously, people who are living outside aren't thinking, oh, let me call before 5 p.m., before the workday ends. Like, that's not really the priority. So another one of his big thoughts was to just take a step back from the project and see 2-in-1 is something that already exists, but look at why is it not working that well? And do I want to just continue on my own venture, doing my own thing? Or do I want to kind of see how to attack 2-in-1 better as an application and a phone service in the meantime, and then also kind of work on my venture on Street Cloud on the side? That's obviously, like, I don't want to abandon Street Cloud, but that's something to think about. Like, should we just improve something that already exists? Yeah, so those are a lot of things that I learned from this meeting. It took place just in like a little kind of conference room, like a round table, kind of like what we have in the think tank. Yeah, it was maybe 30, 40 minutes, but I think it went really well. And I gave him my business card, and then he's going to try to connect me with his friend at Link NYC in finance and see if I can meet with her before we leave New York. But I'm definitely going to use a lot of what I learned, specifically to think more about my revenue structure and my cost structure, because those are kind of two areas of my business model canvas that I haven't put much thought into, kind of because I want to avoid them. Like, I don't want to think about, oh, how do we have to charge certain people for this, or what's going to be a proprietary service, or advertising and whatnot, because that's really commercializing this whole thing, which is kind of getting away from what I wanted to do about it or do with it, like who we're trying to serve um, with this device. So that was pretty interesting, but good tips on revenue and stuff, and how to kind of try to approach the city with the signatures. So I'll definitely think more heavily on that. And then, yeah, I'm just really looking forward to meeting the other people in the other meetings to kind of build off of this like, basic knowledge slash summary of what we've got going on and what people think about it. But he thought it's a great thing. Obviously, there's a demand for it. It's a good opportunity, so he liked it, and I think we're going to stay in contact, hopefully, as I try to bring Street Cloud forward. So yeah, that was my very first meeting analysis. Okay, bye.